This next section, we're going to look at the shape of information, and we're going to look at a couple examples of how hierarchy is expressed in some real world examples. So this first one is in that reading that you were given, and it's a look at 3 different parts of a magazine spread or a magazine. We'll start with the cover. So oftentimes we're going to have on the cover a big photograph. We've got the name of the magazine, which has to be set usually in a very specific way. We'll have a big headline, whatever kind of the cover story is. And then you're going to want a lot of these little teasers about articles that are going to be found inside. And you want to make it clear to the reader, again, what's the most important. And you need to make sure that you're not taking away from the branding. In this case, Radar, the name of the magazine. So we've got a number of different levels going on here. You can see about the cover photo, cover story, clearly about Michelle Obama. And we've got like your header, and then you've got a little subhead. But then you've got a few other levels going on in terms of the different articles you're going to find inside. We've got a few ones that are very small, pulled out, the little yellow with black text. We've got underneath the heart, we've got another kind of lower level information. Then we've got things like Lindsay Lohan, O.J. Simpson, that's kind of the next most important. But the America's 50 Worst Colleges kind of is the, after the cover story, next most important thing in there. So notice how they're using color, they're using scale, and in the case of the cover story, a different font in order to draw our attention to the various levels of information. Now, this example, we've got a cover and the inside table of contents. So we've got front and center, our feature story, and then we've got all these other compact headlines in order to draw you in if, say, the cover story doesn't. But when we look at the table of contents, we've got a little bit more space going on. And here, because we are kind of using the conceit of a table of contents where we've got headers, subheads, and a little blurb about each bit, you want all of those titles to now be the same in terms of emphasis. That it's, okay, this is a header, this is a subhead, this is the blurb. And so for ease of reading for the reader, they need to be the same. You no longer are going to be saying, okay, this is the cover story, it gets a larger font. So you need that consistency to help the reader understand. Newspapers are, again, another really good example. So anything that's complex, like a newspaper, we need to have a lot of levels of hierarchy. And the other thing that's important is that you're not going to be working on this by yourself. And so how do you make sure that there's consistency no matter who's working on the piece? So oftentimes there's going to be a guide that will tell you, okay, here's the various levels of headers, here's how we set everything, and it's laid out and you really are not going to deviate from it. Sometimes we have to be the ones who make this for other people. The more clearly organized everything is, the more likely that the user's going to understand the consistency within the piece. So we'll create style guides to explain the principles of hierarchy to anyone who's going to be using our system. And it gives a nice example so that people, you can see here that they've got some dummy text put in so that you can see what it's supposed to look like. And that's going to help anybody who's coming in to use this understand how to apply it. And here's a kind of zoom in on that. And so again, we're seeing these are the only colors you can use. These are the only fonts you can use. And they tell you here, everything on the left here is letting you know what it is you can use. And then you see it in practice on the right. So that way, if you're coming in to read it, as a reader rather than as a user, we kind of understand when we look at that, even though they're called title, title 1, title 2, we understand inherently what's body text, what is a header, what's a caption, what's a title, what's someone's name. So you might notice here that we've got various levels of hierarchy. So if you've got a lot of information, it can be useful to rank the importance. So header 1 is always going to be the most important, header 2, next most important, header 3, etc. That's useful to know if you're ever coming into somebody else's document or you're working with somebody else's style, so you know how to apply it appropriately. So 1 is always the most important. and then you descend in order of importance. In the first example that we're looking at, working with situating print in space, I'm making sure we have to keep everything on the same level of importance, but the project where we're looking at typographic diseases, you're going to need to decide what size, how to differentiate between a hierarchy of information. So these are some good things to keep in mind. So we'll look at how that's expressed in a concrete example in the next set of slides.